Welcome, everyone. Today, we're going to review how to implement the ICA Global Commissioning Standard on projects without having to be a technical expert in every discipline. So you're about to be able to implement world-class commissioning on your projects and become a global commissioning leader. My name is Paul, and I show project professionals working on industrial plant process and energy systems how to become a global commissioning leader, capable of completing commissioning on time and on budget by applying the ICA Global Commissioning Standard best practices on projects. Now, I'm guessing for a lot of you, this is probably not your first webinar. And the first thing I want to mention is that if you're new to commissioning or if commissioning has not gone well for you in the past, that it's not your fault. There's limited information on commissioning that's out there, and commissioning is not a well understood discipline on projects. The bits and pieces of information that you can find on commissioning are confusing and contradicting, and maybe they don't even apply to the type of projects that you work on. It's difficult to find the right information, and this keeps a lot of people from succeeding with commissioning. So it's understandable if you've had some of these past experiences on your projects. If you're just starting out with commissioning, or if you struggled with commissioning in the past, I want to put your fears to rest. Commissioning can be complex, but it doesn't have to be difficult. You just need the right person to explain it to you and the right standard to follow on your projects. And a lot of people want you to believe that commissioning only takes place at the end of projects, and I'm here to tell you that they're wrong. They have their own reasons for wanting you to think that, but it's absolutely not true. If you've ever thought projects are just always late and over budget, and that's just the way it always is, this is a common misconception in the industry. In fact, there are several groups working on projects that benefit when projects are late and over budget, because who do you think those project overruns get paid to? Some groups on projects are not interested in commissioning at all, and it's not in their best interest to have someone looking over their shoulder telling them what's wrong with their work, right? The difference with the Industrial Commissioning Association is we actually want you and your projects to be successful. We want you to meet cost, schedule, and quality objectives on your projects. We want to help you become a global commissioning leader that can successfully complete projects. And we've compiled all the resources you need to be able to be successful with commissioning. So that's what we're here for. I know you have a dream to work on the biggest and best projects in the world and be able to deliver successful projects for your company. And I want to show you how to make that happen during this webinar. My goal of this presentation is to help two types of people. For people and companies that are new to commissioning, you'll see how the Industrial Commissioning Association gives you the commissioning best practices you need to start your commissioning journey and lead your projects to success. Or for more experienced individuals or companies, you'll see how to become part of the elite 1% of commissioning professionals. You'll see the opportunity to achieve peak performance with commissioning while working on today's most challenging and rewarding projects. In the next hour, my goal is to get you to believe that following the ICA Global Commissioning Standard on projects is the key to successfully completing commissioning. And I'm going to show you my planning frameworks that make it simple for you to plan and execute commissioning on your projects so that you can work on the most challenging and rewarding projects as a global commissioning leader within your company. Whether you work on big projects or small projects, the ICA Global Commissioning Standard applies to all sizes of projects, and I'm going to show you how. In the past 25 years, I've had the amazing chance to build satellites and rockets for the Canadian Space Agency. This taught me the importance of high quality standards when completing projects. I then had the opportunity to work in the power industry, working on HVDC transmission projects and hydroelectric generation projects. I've also worked on large wastewater treatment plant projects, upgrading and expanding the facilities to meet higher environmental license requirements. And more recently, I've been able to help other people apply commissioning best practices to their projects through the training and certification programs that we offer. But I didn't always understand the commissioning process. In fact, just a few short years ago, I was just like you. I was starting out as the commissioning manager of a $5 billion mega project here in central Canada. When you're working on a project this big, it's basically four mega projects all rolled into one super mega project. The project I was working on consisted of a 230 kV AC switchyard in the south, another 230 kV AC switchyard in the north, two HVDC converter stations at the end of the DC line, and four 230 kV synchronous condensers at the southern station. Each of these were basically four separate $1 billion projects on their own, and each of these was a fairly large project just on its own. I was the commissioning manager responsible to oversee all of these projects, and I needed to integrate each part into one single HVDC link spanning 1,400 kilometers and transferring 2,300 megawatts. This seemed like a pretty daunting task when I was just starting out. How was I possibly going to manage all of these pieces of the project and make them all come together as one system during commissioning? I needed to work with each of the four EPC contractors to ensure the entire system was ready to be integrated with the bulk electric system. And I wanted to prove to myself that I could manage commissioning for such a complex project that spanned over 1,400 kilometers. My team was depending on me to pull this all together. Now, typically, the old way of commissioning would be just to test all these systems at the end of the project, right? And hope for the best that everything worked. But we knew this would never work for this type of project. When 9 out of 10 projects are late and over budget, we could not allow that to happen to this project. It was clear that there was too much time and money on the line, and we could not allow this project to be months late and millions of dollars over budget, just like most projects are. We needed a more methodical approach to commissioning to make sure this complex system worked reliably in the end. We need to follow a structured method to systematically complete each portion of the project and bring each system online to the bulk electric system in an organized manner so everything is done safely and so there are no delays in the project. Any delays to the project would have been very expensive, and we needed to make sure we avoided any delays. After all, this system is supplying power that people are depending on in the end, and we needed to make sure that these new assets could be depended on for decades of reliable operation. When working on plant process or energy system projects, there's always lots of people and lots of groups involved, right? Design groups, procurement groups, construction groups, vendors, consultants, regulators, and many more groups involved in a project like this. And everyone has their own idea of what success looks like during commissioning. It is challenging to keep everyone aligned to the common goal of commissioning and to make sure that people don't go off on their own direction that does not align with successful commissioning and startup. It's pretty easy for projects to get off track when everyone starts working in different directions. And when this happens, projects turn into a big mess at the end, and it takes a lot of effort to keep all groups aligned and focused on the end goal of commissioning. And a cohesive commissioning plan is definitely required to make this happen. Otherwise, it can take a lot of time and money to put back together at the end of the project. I got to see each of the four EPC contractors' approach to commissioning, what worked well and what didn't work well. And there were some stark contrasts in each EPC contractor's approach to commissioning. One of the EPC contractors chose a cowboy approach to commissioning. They had no commissioning plans, no test procedures, no documentation. Any documentation that they did have really wasn't very good or thorough, and they did not follow a structured approach to commissioning. I could see that this approach was not working, and in fact, they did miss testing of a critical failure mode of a very important oil pump. And during a power outage at one point in the project, they ended up wiping one of the bearings on this large machine that actually destroyed the machine. This required them to completely disassemble the unit and take it apart, send parts back overseas to overseas factories for repair. And this took many months and cost them millions of dollars because of one of this small items that they never tested correctly in their test sequences. Another one of the EPC contractors, they had world-class commissioning processes. Their test plans and their test procedures were thorough and complete, and they were immaculate in advance of testing. Their test sequences were scheduled 18 months in advance of when on-site testing was going to take place, and testing started exactly on this day that was planned 18 months prior. After seeing both of these polar opposite approaches to commissioning happening concurrently, it was clear to me that a structured approach to commissioning saves time and money on projects because with the structured approach, after 2 years of meticulous planning and coordination for commissioning, we were able to meet the project and service date within 4 days of what was originally planned. However, with the other EPC cowboy approach to commissioning, they were just gambling and they lost big in the end. Their portion of the project ended up 2 years late and millions of dollars over budget. And they lost a lot of money on that contract. In fact, their lead project manager got fired in the last few months of the project. And it was clear to me why, is because he didn't know how to finish the project during commissioning. Everything came apart in the end, and he was not able to contain the mess and put it back together. It was clear to me what a successful approach to commissioning looks like, and I was determined to make sure that all the projects I worked on followed these same best practices for commissioning, and I want to make sure your projects follow these best practices as well, which is why the Industrial Commissioning Association has developed the set of ICA Global Commissioning Standards, so project teams can implement a structured approach to commissioning to avoid cowboy commissioning and save time and money on projects. I mentioned earlier that 9 out of 10 projects are late and over budget. This is a statistic from Professor Bent Flivberg. He's a professor at the University of Oxford, and he's compiled a database of over 16,000 projects and analyzed the outcome of each of these projects. And from his research, his database shows that 92.5% of projects are late and over budget, and that the complexity of projects is a contributing factor to how late projects are. That's 9 out of 10 projects that are late and over budget, and shows that a structured approach to commissioning is required to protect projects from going so far over budget in the end. When the best practices outlined in the ICA Global Commissioning Standard are followed, this significantly reduces project delays and project cost overruns that 9 out of 10 projects experience when they don't follow this approach. By seeing the direct application of the best practices outlined in the ICA Global Commissioning Standard applied to projects, I was able to see how projects are successfully delivered during commissioning. By following the ICA Global Commissioning Standard best practices, this gives me confidence that I am able to successfully complete all sizes of projects on time and on budget, no matter how big or how small or how complex they are. Developing and implementing the ICA Global Commissioning Standard has given me and my team the confidence to know how projects will end, whether they'll be months late and millions of dollars over budget, or if they will be completed efficiently to meet cost and schedule objectives. So here's what we're going to cover in the next half hour or so. We're going to go over the 3 secrets to commissioning success. Secret number 1, how to scale the ICA Global Commissioning Standard to all sizes and types of projects. Secret number 2, how to manage commissioning without being a technical expert in all disciplines. And secret number 3 is how to get management buy-in for commissioning right at the beginning of projects. So let's go over the first secret to commissioning, which is how to scale the ICA Global Commissioning Standard to all types and sizes of projects. The projects I referred to earlier were multi-billion-dollar projects, and you might be thinking the projects that you work on are much smaller, and this standard sounds like it's going to be too much for a smaller type of project. The essence of the ICA Global Commissioning Standard is really that you must start with the end in mind, regardless of the size of projects. It's exactly like Stephen Covey says in his book, 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. Habit number 2 is to begin with the end in mind. So, no matter if projects are big or small, each project must start with the end in mind, which means having a clear vision of what success looks like during commissioning right from the start. It's like that for everything, and projects are no different. You wouldn't run a marathon without first knowing where the finish line is. You would be running around in circles for a fairly long time if you didn't know how to finish the race. It's the same for all sizes of projects. You need a methodical process to complete projects to meet your in-service date. This is the framework I use to implement the ICA Global Commissioning Standard on projects, and it represents what must take place during each stage of projects in order to start with the end in mind. The standard defines what must take place during feed and procurement processes for commissioning. So this includes what is required in construction contracts to define how projects will be completed for construction completions and during commissioning, what commissioning and operations input is required during earlier design reviews to capture lessons learned to align with the end of projects, and preliminary systematization that must take place earlier so that all activities align with the startup sequence to meet your project and service date. The standard defines what must take place during early construction processes. So this includes the detailed definition of your mechanical completion packages, the detailed definition of your integrated construction and commissioning schedule, as well as off-site testing that takes place as part of FAT and IFAT to ensure manufacturers' testing in the factory aligns with the testing that you have planned later on site. The standard defines what must take place for construction completions and on-site testing processes, including the methodical process to complete construction by systems, the on-site testing that takes place during pre-commissioning, commissioning, and startup, and testing during performance verification and trial operation to optimize operations of the facilities. And finally, this standard defines what must take place during the final stages of the project, including how systems are placed in service and handed over to operations, the operational requirements to prepare operating teams for ongoing operation and maintenance of the new facilities, and the final tasks for commissioning closeout. The problem is a lot of project teams only focus on the on-site testing tasks that are part of this standard. And that's really just the tip of the iceberg, though. The on-site testing is really only 20% of the complete commissioning process. The testing is the part that gets the most attention because people can physically touch and feel and see the testing taking place on site. But project teams that only focus on the on-site testing are missing 80% of the activities required for a complete commissioning process. These 80% of activities, the steps of the commissioning process that are hidden below the surface, these are what makes your on-site testing activities successful. And if you're only focusing on the tip of the iceberg and focusing only on testing, then you're unlikely to be successful completing your project. This approach is what leads to 9 out of 10 projects being late and over budget. Let me tell you about a much smaller project that I worked on that did not start with the end in mind and did not follow a methodical approach to completing commissioning. This project was a wastewater treatment plant, and it was less than 5% of the project budget than the bigger projects I mentioned earlier. So this was a much smaller project in the 100 to $200 million range, which is still a lot of money, but much smaller than a multi-billion dollar project. I was brought into the project when construction was about 60% complete, and the owner was in a panic. They needed me on site right away. I remember I had to cancel a trip to Italy because it was urgent that commissioning must start right away. When I got to site, my first mission was to quickly prepare a plan for commissioning. I joined the project in September, and low flow seasonal testing was to start 2 months later in November. I did not have much time to prepare, but I knew I had a framework to follow from the previous projects that I had worked on. So I rapidly started to plan for commissioning, but I quickly found a fundamental flaw in the project, and it really wasn't necessary for me to cancel my trip to Italy and rush to site because there would be no commissioning happening on site anytime soon. The damage was already done much earlier in the project, and there wasn't much that I could do. There was no commissioning involvement during feed and procurement processes, and this is where the problem started. What had happened was the pre-qualification process was insufficient and allowed an unqualified group to bid on the work. And this wasn't anyone's fault. They were doing their best. They just didn't have the necessary skill sets to identify what was required for commissioning to select the right groups during their earlier procurement processes. The proponents bidding on the work, of course, said they were commissioning experts, but that's rarely true when it comes from the sales executives that are preparing proposals. A much deeper dive was required to truly evaluate each group's ability to plan and execute commissioning. And without early commissioning involvement, the project ended up awarding the work to an unqualified group that was incapable of performing their pre-commissioning and vendor startup activities. They had no internal quality management processes and were not able to deliver what was required for commissioning. It was a mess, and I wished I was much more on the Tuscan seaside drinking wine in Italy instead. Because the project ignored commissioning and left it to the end, the project ended up 3 years late and many millions of dollars over budget, far more than the cost savings that the procurement group thought they were saving by awarding the work to the lowest bidder. Despite my efforts to implement a structured approach to commissioning, the contractor did not have the internal management processes or the required skill sets needed for construction quality management or for their pre-commissioning responsibilities. And it was a very long, drawn-out process that resulted in significant cost overruns to finish the project. A much better approach would have been to start with the ICA Global Commissioning Standard to start the project with the end in mind and plan for project success right from the beginning. This was another big aha moment for me that commissioning is not only for big projects, a methodical approach to commissioning is required for all sizes of projects because there are lots of pieces of the commissioning puzzle, and an upfront commissioning effort is required to make sure that all of the pieces fit together in the end, regardless of the size of the project. Without a methodical approach to commissioning, completing projects always results in cowboy commissioning. It's the Wild West. You never have a consistent method to complete projects, and you end up having to reinvent the wheel every time. And this is hardly a responsible approach to completing projects when there's so much time and money on the line. A consistent approach is required to start projects with the end in mind. A question I get asked a lot is what types of projects require commissioning? And there's really two types of commissioning. There's the building commissioning process. So this is the ASHRAE, NEBB, BCXA, or CSA. These are all building commissioning processes. And then there's the industrial commissioning process, which is defined by the ICA Global Commissioning Standard. Building commissioning is very common. When you walk down a city block, you pass a lot of buildings that require HVAC and life safety system commissioning. But industrial commissioning is a bit more specialized since it's a much more integrated process of more complex systems and requires much more attention to the operational aspects of the facility. The facilities requiring industrial commissioning are a bit more hidden since when you walk down a city block, you don't see as many power substations or LNG plants or water treatment facilities. This is why building commissioning has gotten a lot more attention over the years and is maybe why these two commissioning processes often get confused. So there are a lot of similarities between these two processes, but there's a reason that process and energy systems don't use ASHRAE as the standard for commissioning. The building commissioning processes don't cover all aspects required for industrial facilities. Building commissioning systems are typically much more standalone systems. Sure, there's some small interfaces, but for the most part, your lighting control system is independent from the security system, independent from HVAC, independent from the sprinkler systems. And these life safety systems largely function on their own and don't integrate as one functional plant process, which is why the Industrial Commissioning Standard was developed to cover all aspects of more complex integrated systems. The industrial commissioning process applies to projects such as power systems, including high voltage substations, power generation and transmission, renewable energy systems, oil and gas systems such as an LNG plant, process systems such as water and wastewater treatment, a desalination plant, hydrogen generation facilities, manufacturing facilities such as mining and chemical production, data center power and cooling systems. These can sometimes get quite complex. Rail and transport systems with switching and controls requiring integration. Any project that has mechanical, electrical, and automation systems that need to function together as one integrated functional system. So that's the distinction between these two commissioning processes and the types of projects that the industrial commissioning process applies to. Now, let's go over the second secret to commissioning success, which is how to manage commissioning if you're not a technical expert in all disciplines. When you're first getting started with commissioning, you might feel like you need to know all the technical aspects of every discipline and that you don't have the technical expertise to manage commissioning to get the team from point A to point B. But let me reassure you that it's pretty much impossible to know every technical detail about every electrical, mechanical, or controls piece of equipment. I can probably count on one hand the number of experts in the world with this level of knowledge of every technical discipline. More likely, you're more familiar with one of these disciplines. Maybe you understand mechanical, but are not as familiar with electrical or controls, or vice versa. This is very common because nobody is an expert in everything. Instead, the best commissioning teams are made of many subject matter experts. You may not be an expert in transformers, so when you need this expertise on projects, you will bring this person to your commissioning team to help you as the subject matter expert. You may not be the process engineering expert, but you will have your process engineer who is the expert as part of your commissioning team. And you may not know how to start up a compressor, say, for example, but you will have the vendor on site to perform this startup since they're more familiar with their own equipment and its proper function, and they are the best to perform this startup. Everyone adds their own area of expertise to commissioning with your overall leadership to guide the team of experts through the commissioning process. That way, you don't have to be a technical expert in all disciplines. But when you properly plan for commissioning, you have all these experts available when you need them to support your commissioning process. We were commissioning a large 230 kV hydrogen-filled synchronous condenser. One of the contract requirements was to apply an open circuit test at full speed and a short circuit test at full speed. Basically, to apply a full short circuit to the machine and see how the protection systems react. Now, I'd never done one of these tests before, and these are hydrogen-filled units, so if you get this wrong, the machine will explode. No way in hell am I going to do this test. I don't know how to do it safely, but this guy does. He's the expert that does these tests all the time. So when it was time for us to do these tests as defined in our commissioning process, we planned to have him on site for a week, set up all his test equipment, and safely conduct the tests as part of the commissioning team. With this level of expertise, the testing proceeded flawlessly. Everything was done safely. All the data was gathered and everything passed to precision. What this made me realize is that commissioning is more about being a conductor than a soloist. You don't need to play every instrument perfectly. You just need to make sure you're all playing in harmony. And that's where the real value comes in. You don't need to be a technical expert in everything. You just need to know how to ask the right questions and bring in the right people. It's not about mastering everything. It's about guiding the process so that all the moving parts come together seamlessly. You contribute by being the person who makes that integration all happen, not by knowing every single detail of every single system, but by being the leader to manage the team of experts. Are you going to have a commissioning team of 200 people on a smaller project? Of course not. Your team may only be 2 people, but when you bring the right technical experts in for a short time when required, you've got all aspects covered. When you understand the bigger picture of the commissioning process, you are the conductor to lead the group of experts through a well-structured commissioning process. And the Industrial Commissioning Association is here to help you get started in the right direction. Now let's go over the third secret to commissioning success, which is how to get management buy-in for commissioning. You may be thinking, this all sounds great, but I'll never get my management to support this. And this is quite common. There are a lot of misconceptions about commissioning, and your management likely views commissioning as an expense and not as a critical part of projects to save time and money. And if you're not able to get management support for this to start projects with the end in mind, then you're dead in the water before your projects even begin. And you'll never get a common approach to commissioning across all your projects. You'll end up always having to reinvent the wheel each time you start a new project. But it's actually easier than you think to get management buy-in for commissioning. And I'm going to show you how. Your management has a few false beliefs about commissioning, and these are all very common. Your management probably believes that commissioning is just testing at the end of projects, or worse, they believe completing construction is the end of the project. They don't see any value to hire commissioning people at the beginning of projects, or they think they can just get your contractor to take care of commissioning, right? Your management likely thinks commissioning is an extra expense that they can just cut to save money. And they've got way too much on their plates just trying to get projects started and contracts awarded that they don't have time to deal with commissioning at the start. They'll want to try and figure that out much later in the project. These are all very common narratives in the industry, and most projects start out this way. And I'm sure you've heard all these things from your management, right? When you've been having these discussions, these messages exist across all projects in all industries. So don't worry, you're not alone. Every project has this same story, and we're here to help you break these false beliefs and help you get buy-in from your management to improve your commissioning processes on projects to save time and money and deliver high-quality systems that can be used for decades of reliable operation. While we were working on the Bipole 3 power project in central Canada, the multi-billion-dollar project that I told you about earlier, there was a similar power project taking place at the same time on the east coast of Canada called Muskrat Falls. Both of these projects were multi-billion-dollar HVDC transmission projects, and it was interesting because these very similar projects were happening at the same time, and we could compare the different approaches that management was taking towards commissioning. Now, I wasn't involved in the Muskrat Falls project, but the project didn't turn out too well and actually resulted in a public inquiry titled Muskrat Falls, a misguided project. You can read the report. It's at muskratfallsinquiry.ca, and the report makes it pretty easy actually to see what took place during the project. On Bipole 3, management had a very proactive approach to commissioning, and I commend them for this. I was involved in the project as the commissioning manager right from the start. That allowed me to participate in design processes, off-site testing in the factory, and construction processes on site, and to work with all the EPC contractors, all the PhD experts, and operational teams to plan for successful commissioning and startup. One thing I want to highlight is the contrasting approach to off-site testing between these two projects. On an HVDC project, the control and protection systems are quite complex to manage 2,300 megawatt transfers between converter stations that are 1,400 kilometers apart from each other. Our team of HVDC experts recognized this very early and planned for 6 months of integrated factory acceptance testing to perform functional and dynamic testing on the 60 control and protection cubicles in the factory before they were split, and 30 cubicles were sent to the north site and 30 cubicles were sent to the south site. There was, of course, lots of pressure to release these cubicles from the factory because they were urgently needed at site for installation, but we knew that these cubicles must work before leaving the factory if on-site testing was to go smoothly. And sure enough, with this approach, on-site testing was a breeze. The only thing to find really was a few small wiring errors that were easily fixed, but this early approach to testing both the hardware and the software in the factory saved a lot of time during on-site testing because we knew everything worked before it arrived at site. Now, contrast that to the approach management took for the Muskrat Falls control and protection cubicles. The project ended up years late and millions or even billions, I don't know what the final number was, over budget. And these were the headlines that were published at the time. In March 2022, the headline is Software Struggles Persist, Completion Impossible to Predict. Not good. In June 2022, another headline, Software Troubles Blamed for $260 million cost increase. That's incredible. And in March 2023, Muskrat Falls discovers new problems, which the article describes as problems testing software at full power capacity. Now, you can see by these headlines, they're still developing software for the control and protection cubicles at a very late stage in the project. These software problems can only exist if the cubicles left the factory without being fully factory acceptance tested. And I don't know how much time and money the project thought they were saving by rushing cubicles to site for installation, but I'm sure it was less than the resulting years and of delays and millions of dollars in over expenditures that occurred. So I can't comment too much more on Muskrat Falls because I wasn't there, but from the public inquiry and these public headlines, you can see the two different approaches that management took for commissioning and the resulting public scrutiny that Muskrat Falls had to endure by deferring commissioning to later in the project. No management team wants a public inquiry document titled A Misguided Project. When you present these types of case studies to your management, instead of talking about the technical aspects of commissioning, this quickly gets their attention because nobody wants to deal with this type of public scrutiny, and nobody wants project to be years late, and nobody wants to pay for millions or billions of over expenditures when projects are late. At the Industrial Commissioning Association, we've got the resources, the case studies, and presentation slide decks that you need so you can get your management buy-in for commissioning on your projects much earlier and avoid these costly mistakes on projects. The big aha for management usually comes when they realize that the cost of fixing things at the end of the project is far higher than if they'd invested in commissioning from the start. They don't see this initially because they've still got some false beliefs about commissioning. But when you rewrite the story they're telling themselves in their head with these case studies, presentations, and reports, they're able to see the true value of commissioning. They start to realize it's not just about the technical details, it's about the financial and time cost of rework, delays, and the risk of project failure. And when you frame discussions in this manner and management sees these case studies and the possibility of being dragged through the coals publicly, they become much more open to discussing commissioning earlier in projects, and they no longer view it as an expense, but as a way to save money, save time, and reduce risk on projects. It's not about convincing management with technical details. It's about showing them the impact commissioning has on the things that they actually care about, right? Budget, timelines, and project success. When I started framing my discussions this way, talking about risk reduction, cost savings, and efficiency, rather than just the technical side, I found that management was much more opening to listen to these ideas. And it was much easier than I thought to connect the dots between commissioning and the results that they cared about. With the right message, you can make all the difference. It works every time. You can show your management that commissioning isn't an expense, it's a safeguard. And you can show your management that every dollar spent on commissioning upfront can prevent $5 of rework later. With discussions framed in this manner, management starts seeing commissioning as a key cost-saving measure rather than a cost to cut. So we've covered a lot of good information in this presentation. But what's next? How do you actually start implementing the ICA Global Commissioning Standard on your projects? If you took the information I gave you in secret number 1 and scaled the commissioning best practices in the ICA Global Commissioning Standard to the size of projects you work on, whether your projects are huge multi-billion-dollar mega projects, or if your projects are smaller, less complex projects, and use this information to start projects with the end in mind, and then you use secret number 2 to assemble your commissioning team of subject matter experts so that you don't have to be the technical expert in everything yourself. And then you use secret number 3 to get management buy-in to implement these new commissioning processes on your projects with your management supporting you at every step along the way. Do you think you would have a better chance of being successful with commissioning? It's difficult for me to cover all the details of commissioning in a short presentation like this, and sometimes it can feel like drinking from a fire hose when trying to understand commissioning. Would you like to see how you can get some additional help with implementing the ICA Global Commissioning Standard on your projects? The Industrial Commissioning Association offers a progression path to help you along your commissioning journey. When you're first starting out on your commissioning journey and you're new to commissioning, you're likely starting out with cowboy commissioning. You're losing time during commissioning, and it's a brute force method to get testing done. And your projects are probably losing money due to costly delays. The next progression step on your commissioning journey is planning commissioning during the middle of construction when construction is, say, 60% complete. Your commissioning plans are still more reactive, but at least commissioning is being managed. But your projects are still likely losing money as you encounter costly delays due to late stage planning. As you move further along your commissioning journey, you start planning commissioning at the beginning of projects, and this is a much more proactive approach to completing commissioning and a much more focused approach to save time and money on projects. The last progression step on your commissioning journey is as a certified CXPM. This is for the elite 1% of commissioning managers that are at the top of their game and are leaders in the industry planning and coordinating commissioning for the most complex projects. And we've got a training program to help you at each stage of your commissioning journey as you learn and grow and gain experience, leading you towards eventually becoming a certified CXPM. If you're just starting out with commissioning, you can check out some of the free resources that we have in the ICXA members area. There's lots of free courses you can use to get started on your commissioning journey. Then when you're ready, you can join our intermediate planning program that gives you the fundamental requirements to plan for commissioning during mid-stage construction. To truly master commissioning, you'll then want to take our advanced planning program. This gives you all the advanced planning frameworks to plan for commissioning right from the start of projects, starting during feed and procurement processes in order that you start projects with the end in mind. And when you've mastered commissioning and meet the required years of experience, you can then write the CXPM exam to become certified. This shows you are part of the elite 1% of commissioning experts that have truly mastered the art of commissioning. These are the commissioning managers that are in high demand to lead projects to successful completion. There's also an opportunity to challenge the CXPM exam. If you've already got years of experience and meet the minimum requirements, then you can challenge the exam to become CXPM certified. Wherever you're at on your commissioning journey, if you're just starting out or if you've got years of experience, we've got a program to help you along your way. If your company has less mature commissioning processes and require a more structured approach to save time and money, we've got resources to help you integrate world-class commissioning into your project delivery strategies. This is what you get when you enroll. Each of these programs are based on the ICA Global Commissioning Standard. The intermediate planning framework gives you the commissioning best practices to plan commissioning during mid-stage construction. The advanced planning framework gives you the commissioning best practices to plan commissioning during feed and procurement to start with the end in mind. And when you're ready and gained experience on your projects, you can then write the CXPM certification exam to receive your CXPM designation. These are the programs that I wish I had when I was starting out on my commissioning journey to accelerate my learning and to apply commissioning best practices to my projects right from the start. And these are the programs that help companies elevate their internal processes so their teams know how to implement commissioning best practices to deliver world-class projects. When you learn how to apply the ICA Global Commissioning Standard to your projects, you're able to follow a proven path for commissioning, saving you from making costly mistakes so you can advance your career and improve your ability to complete projects. When companies implement the ICA Global Commissioning Standard as part of their project delivery strategies, they're able to save time and money on projects and delight their project stakeholders with high quality systems that can be used for decades of reliable operation without having to reinvent the wheel for each project. When I was first starting out on projects, I was constantly running into roadblocks and constantly making the wrong decisions as I learned what worked and what didn't. It took me 10 years to become good at commissioning and learn these best practices for commissioning. There were lots of wrong turns that caused delays during projects and lots of money wasted because I wasn't nearly as efficient when planning commissioning as I could have been. I had to establish a new commissioning process for each project since there was no standard to follow. But I don't want you to have to figure this out for each project. I've already got the proven processes you need to succeed with project commissioning, and I'm just going to give it all to you in these training programs. When you sign up, you get instant access to the program you choose, which range in value from $850 US to $1,500 US, depending on which program that you choose. And recall from earlier, this is what these programs cover. They cover the ICA Global Commissioning Standard steps required during feed and procurement. They cover the standards steps required during early construction. They cover the standard steps required during project completion, including construction completions and on-site testing, and they cover the standards steps required during project closeout. Let me show you some of the people who've had a chance to go through our programs already. This is Sheldon. After enrolling in our Advanced Planning Framework program, this is what he had to say. I always wanted to understand the commissioning process, and I can honestly say that this exceeded my expectations. Looking forward to more. Or Kale. He was very impressed with the content and the explanations. Very professionally done. The downloadable content is invaluable. I highly recommend this for anyone in the field. Or Jonald. He says, only just now I understand the importance of each phase of commissioning and why we are doing it on site. I've been searching for this since 2010, and thanks to Mr. Paul Turner to finally make it happen. Or Saeed. He says, this is the first commissioning explanation I've ever seen that truly matches with what really happens at site. So I want to go back and make sure you realize who this is for. This is for individuals who want to learn and grow and excel in managing commissioning. This is for individuals that want a head start so their commissioning journey doesn't have to take 10 years like it did for me. This is also for technical people that want to advance their commissioning career and move higher up in the org chart to become leaders of commissioning. And equally for non-technical people such as project managers that need to plan and manage commissioning on projects to meet cost and schedule objectives. This is also for companies that want to apply the ICA Global Commissioning Standard best practices to projects. Maybe you don't have as mature commissioning processes as you need and need to upgrade your commissioning processes to deliver projects more efficiently. Well, these programs help you do that. These programs can be used to onboard new employees so they can start contributing to your project teams faster, or to train existing employees so they can apply improved commissioning best practices to projects so they can prepare for upcoming commissioning and avoid expensive delays later. You might be thinking, maybe you're not quite ready for this just quite yet. And you're thinking you might want to do this later since you're too busy on projects now and you'll start once you're less busy. But the thing about projects is that once you're busy, you're always busy. The good people are always scooped up to work on the next project, and there's never really a break in between projects. At least that was the case when I completed projects. When people notice that you're good and that you know how to complete commissioning on projects, they seek you out and they want you on their next project. So it's a mistake to wait until later since you don't want to delay getting noticed on projects and you likely won't get a break in between projects. There's just so much project work out there these days that you'll quickly be scooped up for the next project. And for companies, Any delay to implement the ICA Global Commissioning Standard on your projects is costing you delays on projects. You're unnecessarily paying for cost overruns with less mature project completion processes. You can't delay any longer to improve your commissioning delivery strategies. Projects are just getting even more cost competitive and more complex as the time goes by. And with the massive amount of work on projects, you can't afford to waste time and money due to inefficiencies in your delivery strategies. When you enroll, you also get our scalability case study booklet that demonstrates how to apply the ICA Global Commissioning Standard to all sizes of projects. So, how to scale up the full set of best practices to the biggest and most complex projects, or as well, how to scale down the requirements so you're able to apply commissioning best practices to small projects as well. So either way, you're able to apply the commissioning best practices that best suit your specific project size. You also get our industry-specific application playbook that shows you how commissioning best practices are applied in all varying industrial plant processes and energy systems. So if you're working on oil and gas projects or power systems, process systems such as water, wastewater treatment, if you're working on a renewable energy project, a manufacturing plant, say chemical manufacturing, mining facility, transportation networks, and many more, you can see how you can apply the same commissioning best practices to your specific industry so that you can get the best results. You also get our commissioning on a budget guide. So even if you don't have a large budget for commissioning, you can still apply these commissioning best practices to save time and money on your projects. Now, I created these resources because I want you to have a custom tailored solution that meets your exact project needs. These resources make it easy to apply the ICA Global Commissioning Standard to your specific size of projects and your specific industry needs. And I'm giving you all these resources to make sure you're successful with the ICA Global Commissioning Standard for your specific project situation. These three resources are included in our Commissioning Adaptability Toolkit. And this toolkit is valued at $1,300, included for free when you enroll to ensure you're successful on your commissioning journey. You might also be thinking that this sounds complex. I'm not sure if I can do this. I'm not an expert in all technical disciplines. And I've created some resources to make sure you personally are successful with commissioning. So when you enroll, you get our quick start commissioning guide that breaks down the entire commissioning process into easy to follow steps and shows you how to leverage the technical skills that you already have and how and where to get the commissioning expertise you're maybe not as familiar with when you're planning commissioning. You've got all your bases covered with this guide to make sure you've got access to the subject matter experts you need when you need them on projects. You also get our Commissioning for Project Managers toolkit. So this is super helpful for people with a project management background that need to plan and manage commissioning. This toolkit explains how integrating commissioning early on enhances the role of project managers and provides super helpful insights into how project managers can gain control over project risk, timelines, and budget using commissioning as a strategic tool. Plus, you also get our time-saving commissioning start guide, which streamlines your learning process so you can get this expertise as efficiently as possible, because I know you're very busy on projects, and this guide shows you how to fit this program around your other workload and personal requirements so you can optimize your time and get started much easier. These resources empower you as a commissioning leader because I know projects life is busy and I know you've got a lot going on. I wanted to make sure you can still get this expertise in the limited spare time that you have, while also structuring commissioning in a way so that you've got all technical disciplines covered, even if you're not as familiar with some of the disciplines that are involved. If you've got a project management background, then you'll love these resources to help you plan the completion of your projects to meet cost and schedule objectives. And these resources, again, are all available to you when you enroll to help you succeed with the ICA Global Commissioning Standard. These three resources alone are valued at $13.50, and they're included for free when you enroll. So you've got the personal power to succeed on your commissioning journey. I'm sure in the back of your mind, you're also thinking, how am I going to get my management on board with this? What questions are clients and stakeholders going to have with this? They only see commissioning as an expense, not as an opportunity to save money. And I'll never be able to convince them of this. So when you enroll, you also get our project management buy-in pack that includes our leadership buy-in presentation kit that has video presentations, slide decks, and case studies you can use to get buy-in from your upper management and improve the maturity of your commissioning processes to save time and money on projects. So this makes it much easier to get the buy-in and support you need for commissioning. You also get our client and stakeholder persuasion pack. This helps you overcome any objectives you get from other groups that may have questions about commissioning and how it helps projects succeed. And this eliminates any roadblocks you might have to delivering your successful projects. Plus, this is super helpful. You also get our ROI calculator. This is a super useful tool that allows you to calculate the return on investment stakeholders achieve when they implement commissioning best practices. So with this tool, it's easy to show others how much money they save with commissioning, making it easy to get their buy-in and support. So you can use this tool on any size of project to show upper management how much money projects save when they support your commissioning initiatives. And really, this is the tool that I wish I had when I started out in commissioning to show my management how commissioning saves money rather than costs money. These resources get you the support and buy-in you need for commissioning to overcome any roadblocks you might get from others. And when you use these tools, it's a lot easier to get buy-in for commissioning on your projects. I'm removing all the roadblocks for you so you can get the support you need for commissioning and finally get on with successfully completing projects during commissioning. These three resources are super valuable and valued at $4,500 at least. They help you overcome any questions you may get about commissioning to remove roadblocks and make sure you're successful on your commissioning journey. Now, obviously, I'm not going to charge you $8,000 for all of this, but if I did charge you $8,000 and all it did was position you as the commissioning leader on projects and improve the maturity of your internal commissioning processes to successfully plan and execute commissioning of industrial plant process and energy system projects, would it still be worth it? If all these programs did was show you how to apply the ICA Global Commissioning Standard best practices to your projects and scale the requirements up or down to meet your specific size and type of projects, would it be worth it? If all these programs did was show you how to manage commissioning without needing to be a technical expert in every discipline, would that alone be worth it? And if all these programs did was get management buy-in for commissioning on your projects, would that one item alone be worth it to you? I had two choices when I created this program. I could have created this program as cheap as possible and try to enroll as many people as I could, but the problem with that is I wouldn't have been able to stack on all this value that I'm able to give you. So I decided to go with a second option, which obviously requires a slightly higher investment on your side. But in exchange for that, my team and I have been able to dedicate more time, energy, and resources to create this world-class commissioning program to help you succeed with commissioning on your projects. There's no other program like this since we've poured our heart and soul into making this the best commissioning program in the world. You won't find anything even close to this to help you and your projects succeed with commissioning. So if you could achieve the level of success we've discussed today to become a global commissioning leader, to implement world-class commissioning processes within your company, and to be able to work on the biggest and best projects, would that be worth it to you? How much would you pay for that kind of success in your career and on your projects? You can probably see why people pay a lot of money for this expertise. This is a specialized skill set that is highly in demand on projects. And people pay to get this expertise because it's not a cost. They see it as an investment in themselves, an investment in their career, and an investment in their project delivery strategies for improved project outcomes. And even at $8,000, this is still a great deal. But because you took the time to watch this presentation and learn about commissioning, that shows me you're a perfect fit for commissioning and will be able to deliver great results for your projects. So I'm able to give you a very special offer. You can get started on your commissioning journey for only $850 US. You can get started with the intermediate planning program right away and take the first step towards becoming CXPM certified. And it's easy to get started for only $850 US. All you have to do is click the links below this video to take the next step. If you're interested as an individual, click the link below to apply and you'll be taken to the page with your enrollment links. Or if you're interested in this for your company, click the link below to tell us a little bit about you and your projects, and you'll be able to book a call to meet with me to answer any questions that you have. Choose the link below that best meets your needs. Now, let me put this into perspective for you. You can spend the next 10 years becoming proficient with commissioning just like I did. You can continue with your outdated and inconsistent commissioning methodologies within your company, having to reinvent the wheel for each project, or you can get everything you need in one concise package and make it much easier to advance your commissioning plans and deliver successful projects. And at this point, you have two choices. You can choose to do nothing. You can leave this page and you can continue with your current commissioning methods. And if you do nothing with the information you've learned in this presentation, what will you have? Well, you'll have nothing. Or you can choose to get started on your commissioning journey. You can choose to take the first small step just to test out and see if our programs will work for you and your projects. You can take the first step in your commissioning journey risk-free since we offer a 30-day money-back guarantee. If you enroll in one of our programs and you find out that this is really just not for you, no problem. Email us within 30 days of enrolling and you can get a full refund, no questions asked. You can get started on your commissioning journey, and if you decide this is really not for you, no problem. We'll give you all of your money back. We are an authorized training partner with the Project Management Institute and accredited by the Engineering Institute of Canada. So you know you've got the right support to help you on your commissioning journey. The PMI and EIC credentials allow us to issue CEU and PDH professional development credits, which you can use to fulfill your professional development requirements if you like. The real question is it worth gambling a few minutes of your time to check this out, to see how this helps you along your commissioning journey and how it helps you improve the maturity of your project delivery strategies to deliver successful projects? Even if our programs only do half of what I've claimed today, you'll still be far better off than being stuck with cowboy commissioning. You can get started on your commissioning journey for only $850. When you enroll, you get access to our first intermediate planning framework for commissioning, or you can choose to enroll in both the intermediate and advanced planning programs at the same time. You get our commissioning adaptability toolkit that shows you how to scale up or scale down the commissioning best practices to suit your specific project size, as well as how to adapt the ICA Global Commissioning Standard to your specific industry and your specific type of projects, even if you have a small budget for commissioning. You also get our Commissioning Success Pack that shows you how to get started managing commissioning without needing to be a technical expert in every discipline, how to streamline learning so you can fit this program into your already busy schedule, and how project managers can leverage commissioning as a strategic tool to gain control over project risk, timelines, and budgets when they apply these commissioning principles. Plus, you also get our management buy-in pack, so you can get your management to buy in to these commissioning processes and best practices, and our ROI calculator, so you can show them how much time and money these commissioning best practices will save them on projects. Take the next step at the links below. If you're an individual, you can submit your application and you will receive the links to enroll right away. Or if your company is interested to learn more, you can tell us a bit more about your projects and book a call to discuss all the different ways we can help you improve the maturity of your commissioning processes to deliver world-class projects to your stakeholders. Either way, take the next step at the links below to start your commissioning journey. So thanks for watching, and I look forward to helping you succeed along your commissioning journey.